flying 260 miles over southeast Russia, northeast of the town of Belgorod. Everything continues to proceed as expected, and the spacecraft is now less than 80 kilometers away from the International Space Station and continuing to close in on its final destination. Here in Mission Control Houston, the Orbit 2 team of flight controllers is currently on deck, monitoring the Expedition 71 crew and station systems on the International Space Station in preparation to support the arrival of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft. There on your screen, you are seeing a live look inside the Russian Mission Control Center in Koryov, just outside of Moscow. Following third stage separation and orbital insertion, the command of the spacecraft was handed over from the team in Baikonur to the Russian Mission Control team, and they have been monitoring the vehicle since then as it continues to approach the International Space Station. Since the time of launch and the orbital insertion earlier today, the spacecraft has undergone a few burns. There is a series of impulse burns from the engine on the Soyuz vehicle. So far, it has completed 3 of those impulse burns and has about 3 to go. These impulse burns are very short bursts to further fine-tune the spacecraft's path to the International Space Station.
Rate 54.5 approach rate.
Вас понял.
Copy.
Параметры приняты.
We copy all the parameters.
And there you are hearing some conversations between the crew on the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft and the team in Mission Control Moscow as they continue to approach the International Space Station. After Soyuz completes its series of impulse burns, it will get within range of the space station and conduct a fly-around. This fly-around is currently scheduled for approximately 2:15 p.m. Central today, and it will start once Soyuz is at a range of about 400 meters, and the fly-around angle today will be 54 degrees. Following the fly around, the spacecraft will then align with the docking port on the Rosviet module, and once aligned, the vehicle will briefly go into station keeping to allow flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center here on your screen in Koryov outside of Moscow to analyze the alignment between the forward docking probe on the Soyuz and the docking port on the space station's Rosviet module. We're expecting to see this station keeping take place around 2:19 p.m. Central, and then once the proper alignment is confirmed, they will reinitiate the docking sequence and begin final approach. Final approach will take place around 2:21 p.m. Central, and Soyuz uses an automated radar-based system called CORS to dock to the International Space Station. The active portion of the cores is on Soyuz, and then there is passive equipment that is on the International Space Station. And between the active portion on Soyuz, it sends a radio beacon signal to the passive portion on the International Space Station that updates information on the range and range rate of closure. In the event of a problem with the core system, Soyuz commander Alexey Ovchinin would take over and manually fly the spacecraft in for docking. In just under 30 minutes from now, we are expecting a go, no-go poll for docking to take place with the flight control team. And we are just over 57 minutes away from today's planned docking. Again, today's docking is planned for 2:33 p.m. Central Time, 3:33 p.m. Eastern Time. Following today's docking, the space station population will increase temporarily from 9 to 12 people with the addition of NASA astronaut Don Pettit and his Roscosmos cosmonaut crewmates Alexey Ovchinin and Ivan Vagner. And once the hatches are open between the newly arrived Soyuz and the International Space Station, Pettit, Ovchinin, and Wagner will be greeted by the current International Space Station commander Oleg Kononenko and his crewmates, Roscosmos cosmonauts Nikolai Chub and Alexander Grabenkin, along with NASA astronauts Tracy Dyson, Matt Dominic, Michael Barrett, Jeanette Epps, Sonny Williams, and Butch Wilmore, who together comprise Expedition 71.
MCC Moscow Borolak 1, time 21.
After docking today, we expect to see that hatch opening a couple hours later.
Range rate is 46.2 meters per second. Approaching.
Принято.
Copy.
We expect to see that hatch opening a couple hours later at approximately 4:50 p.m. Central, 5:50 p.m. Eastern. Pettit and his Russian crewmates, Ovchinin and Wagner, will remain on board through March of next year, returning home at that time on the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft, which is bringing them to the International Space Station today. After a few hours of launch day preparations earlier today, the crew left the Site 254 integration building and arrived at the pad, and then liftoff of the Soyuz 2.1A booster with the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft on top carrying Pettit, Ovchinin, and Wagner occurred on time at 11:23 a.m. Central, 12:23 p.m. Eastern, and 9:23 p.m. in Baikonur, as the space station was flying 260 miles over southwest Kazakhstan. The vehicle performed well, and all three stages performed as expected for its 8-minute and 45-second ride to orbit. The solar arrays and antennas were then deployed, and the trio was on their way to
MCC Moscow, Brolak 1, time 21:42:00, range 23.7 kilometers, range rate 34.5 meters per second, approaching station.
Вас понял.
Copy.
For those of you who are just joining us, we are bringing you live coverage of the rendezvous and docking of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft that is carrying NASA astronaut Don Pettit and his crewmates, Soyuz commander Alexey Ovchinin and flight engineer Ivan Vagner. Everything continuing to proceed as expected, and we are about 50 minutes away from that planned undocking time at 2:33 p.m. Central Time, 3:33 p.m. Eastern Time. Pettit's launch and docking today mirrors that of Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov, who is scheduled to launch to the station as part of the SpaceX Crew 9 Dragon later this month, and this provides a reciprocal crew exchange capability to maintain safe and continuous space station operations. And the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft is now about 20 kilometers away from the International Space Station and continuing to close in on its destination. And today's docking will set the International Space Station up for a busy sequence of crew rotations. In just a couple of weeks, we will see the departure of the Soyuz MS-25 spacecraft, and that is scheduled for September 23rd, bringing NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson and her Roscosmos crewmates Nikolai Chub and Alexander Gurbankin back to Earth with a parachute-assisted landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan. Dyson will have spent 6 months in space on this her third flight into space, while Kononenko and Chub will come home after completing a full year on orbit. The departure of the Soyuz MS-25 spacecraft
4505, range 18 kilometers, range rate 27.1 meters per second, approaching IC station in the center of Skyenzakau.
Вас понял.
Copy.
Можно выдать команду display plus TV и ПУ-2.
You can send the command from display plus TV from input 2. I send the command display plus TV. Copy.
And you just heard some additional conversation with the crew.
The maneuver along the roll
Да, вас понял.
angle at the range of less than 15 kilometers. Copy all.
And you just heard some additional conversation between the crew aboard the Soyuz MS-26 and flight controllers on the ground, reporting that they are about 18 kilometers away from the International Space Station and continuing to close in on their target. They also reported that they saw the International Space Station in the distance. So again, in just a couple of weeks after today's docking, we will see the departure of the Soyuz MS-25 spacecraft scheduled for September 23rd. The departure of this spacecraft will then
Yes.
mark the start of
What's the
Expedition
time for
72.
lift activation? 2150.
Shortly after, we will see the launch of NASA's SpaceX Crew 9 mission, carrying NASA astronaut Nick Hague and Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov to the International Space Station. Crew 9 will then have a short handover period with Crew 8 before Crew 8 returns back to Earth, carrying NASA astronauts Matt Dominic, Michael Barrett, and Jeanette Epps, along with Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gurbankin. Crew 8 will have spent approximately 7 months in space after arriving in early March of this year.
Moscow Burlak 1, range 14 kilometers, 700 meters, 21 and 9, range rate and closing. We are monitoring the roll maneuver. Copy. TSCOD 3, I did not save it. 22 05 25. Okay, and what's the burn? 5.31. Time 15 seconds. 19 seconds. 19.
And the Soyuz spacecraft now closing in at less than 14 kilometers away from the International Space Station as it continues to proceed in for docking.
Time 20:48:30. Range rate 19.2 and closing. Short test done. Acquisition on course 1 string confirmed. Copy. All nominal. Standing by for closed transmitter activation at 21:50:02. Good copy. Correction is approximately at a distance of 2.5 kilometers. And the time is also an estimate. Monitor the maneuver. Copy. Unintelligible.
And we are now about 43 minutes away from today's expected docking time of 2:33 p.m. Central Time, 3:33 p.m. Eastern Time. And we are expecting a go, no-go poll for docking to take place in about 15 minutes. Also coming up, we will see the next impulse burn in a series of 6 burns. It'll be the 4th one in that series. We're expecting to see that in about 15 minutes, around 2:05 p.m. Central, 3:05 p.m. Eastern.
I check if closed is on. Moscow Burlak 1, time 21:51:20, range 10.4 kilometers, range rate 13.9 and closing. Closed transmitter on, confirmed. Copy.
And there you're seeing a live view of the Russian Mission Control Center in Koryov outside of Moscow. That team took over control of the spacecraft following orbital insertion earlier today. And the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft is now less than 10 kilometers away from the International Space Station and continuing to close in.
Transmitter activation, and we see the screen on Vakul. Copy. This is Burlak 1.
We are now less than 40 minutes away
Time
from today's expected docking.
10, range 9 kilometers, 11.5 meters per second, and closing. Target is in the center of Veska. Copy. We can see that.
And you are
Station is in the center of Veska.
And you're continuing to hear communication between the Soyuz MS-26 crew and the teams on the ground, reporting the range and range rate of the vehicle as it continues to close in on the International Space Station. The vehicle is now less than 9 kilometers away from the space station. And we are now just over 38 minutes away from today's expected docking, and we're also expecting a go-no-go poll for today's docking in a little over 10 minutes from now. And around that same time, we will also see the impulse 4 burn take place, and these series of impulse burns take place from the engine on the Soyuz vehicle, and they are just very short bursts to further fine-tune the spacecraft's path to the International Space Station.
Time 21:55:00. Range 7.8 kilometers. Rate 9.7 meters per second, and closing. Station is in the center of the Vakul Veska.
Принято.
Copy.
We are now about 37 minutes away from docking for the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft to the International Space Station. Today's docking will see the arrival of NASA astronaut Don Pettit and his Roscosmos cosmonaut crewmates, Alexey Ovchinin and Ivan Vagner. The Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft was launched atop a Soyuz 2.1A booster rocket from Launch Pad 6, Site 31 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan earlier today at 11:23 a.m. Central Time, 12:23 a.m. Eastern Time, 9:23 p.m. in Baikonur. Everything continues to proceed as expected with today's rendezvous and docking, and the spacecraft continues to close in on its destination, the International Space Station. Again, we are expecting docking today for 2:33 p.m. Central Time, 3:33 p.m. Eastern Time. At the time of docking, the International Space Station and the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft will be flying 260 miles over southeast Russia. Here in Mission Control, Houston, the Orbit 2 team of flight controllers are currently on deck monitoring the Expedition 71 crew.
50 and about 0.
And there on your screen in the
6.7
center, you can see
kilometers
Flight
range.
Director Judd Freeling,
Right.
and to his right is the Capcom or Capsule Communicator
Station
Luca
at the center
Parmitano,
of VSK.
and the
This is
Capcom serves
Bulak
as the voice link between
Copy,
teams
Bulak
on the
1.
grounds and the station crew. We expect to see a no-go poll from the flight control team in about 7 minutes from now for the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft to proceed in for docking. And there on your screen now, you're seeing a crosshair view from the Soyuz spacecraft. And in the bottom left corner of that crosshair, you can see the range and range rate of closure of the Soyuz to the International Space Station. So there on your screen, you can see that the Soyuz spacecraft is about 5.9 kilometers away from the International Space Station and closing in at a rate of 8.45 meters per second.
Range 5.8, 8.4 range rate and closing. Station is in the center of VSK. So this is Bulak 1 reporting. Copy.
We are now about 33 minutes away from the docking of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft to the International Space Station. Following initial contact and capture of the Soyuz MS-26 to the International Space Station, there will be a period of a couple of minutes to allow the relative motion between the Soyuz and the International Space Station to dampen out on the docking interface between the two.
2200, range 5.2 kilometers, rate 8.4 meters per second, and closing. Station is in the center of VSK. Bulak 1 reporting.
And once that relative motion dampens out, the forward docking probe on Soyuz will begin to retract. Hooks will then close, and we will have a hard meet between Soyuz and the station. We are expecting to see that hook closure around 2:40 p.m. Central, about 7 minutes after initial docking. After that hard mate, there will be a period of standard leak checks to ensure we have an airtight seal between Soyuz and the International Space Station before we open up the hatches. Hatch opening is currently targeted for about 4:50 p.m. Central, 5:50 p.m. Eastern. Soyuz is now about 4.5 kilometers away from the International Space Station and closing in at a rate of approximately 8.6 meters per second. Coming up in about 4 minutes, we will see that impulse 4 burn. That impulse burn will be a short burst to further fine-tune the spacecraft's path to the International Space Station, and there are 6 total impulse burns planned.
Time 22:00:00. 4.1 kilometers range rate 8.6 meters per second and closing. Station is in the Vagner Center, Burlak 1.
Вас понял.
Copy all.
And if you look to the center of that crosshair view on your screen, you can start to see the outline of the International Space Station making its appearance as the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft carrying NASA astronaut Don Pettit and Roscosmos cosmonauts Alexey Ovchinin and Ivan Vagner continue to close in on the International Space Station. They're now about 3.8 kilometers away, closing in at a rate of about 8.8 meters per second. And now on your screen, you can see the onboard control panel. This is basically the screen that the Soyuz crew is seeing. And on that left upper side, you can see that crosshair camera that we were previously seeing. And you can now really see the International Space Station coming into view. So this view on your screen is what the crew aboard Soyuz are seeing. And again, that crew is NASA astronaut Don Pettit and Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexey Ovchinin and Ivan Vagner.
Range 2.9 kilometers. Range rate 8.9 meters per second and closing. ISS in the Vagner Center. Copy.
And the Soyuz spacecraft is now less than 2.7 kilometers away from the International Space Station and continuing to close in. In just about a minute from now, we should see that Impulse 4 burn take place.
Maneuver started. Station is shifting by 1 hour.
Принято.
Copy.
And that Impulse 4 burn is now underway.
Confirmed 22:06:08.
Again, those impulse burns are just short bursts
10 seconds, so we made 3 meters.
to fine-tune.
44, BK 22:06:23. Duration 5 magnitude 553, and the duration is 15 seconds.
Тоже контролировали.
Copy.
Так, наблюдаем обратный разворот.
We're observing the reverse maneuver.
And there you can see the International Space Station coming back into view
220725.
of that crosshair camera.
1,046 meters, rate 4.5 meters per second, and closing. ISS is in the center of Vagner. Copy.
And we just had that impulse 4 burn complete. Again, those impulse
Do you copy
burns.
video? Yes, we have good video.
Those impulse burns are just short bursts to fine-tune the spacecraft's path. We will have 2 additional impulse burns to complete the series. The impulse 5 burn is scheduled for about 2:09 p.m. Central, 3:09 p.m. Eastern, and the final impulse 6 burn is scheduled for around 2:12 p.m. Central, 3:12 p.m. Eastern. The Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft is now about 1.4 kilometers away from the International Space Station and closing in at a rate of about 4.1 meters per second. And we should see that impulse 5 burn in about a minute from now. And we are about 24 minutes away from today's planned docking.
Time 220920, range 1190 meters, range rate 3 meters per second, and closing. Station is in the center of Vagner.
And we are now about 23 minutes away from today's planned docking. The Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft is about 1 kilometer away from the International Space Station and continuing to close in at a rate of about 3.6 meters per second. In about 5 minutes from now, Soyuz will get within range of the space station and then go into its fly around. We are expecting that fly around to take place around 2:15 p.m. Central, 3:15 p.m. Eastern time today. And that fly around will start at a range of about 400 meters with an angle of 54 degrees.
We see red dampen.
And we just heard confirmation that impulse 5 burn is underway.
Range 950 meters, range rate 2.7 meters per second, Burlock 1 reporting. Copy.
And there on your screen now, you can see a live look of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft as it closes in on the International Space Station. This view is coming from some of those external cameras aboard the International Space Station. And you can see as it conducts that impulse 5 burn, you saw a couple of short bursts there from its engine. And again, that impulse 5 burn is part of a series of 6 burns to further fine-tune the spacecraft's path to the International Space Station. And Soyuz and the International Space Station are currently flying over the northeast coast of Brazil.
221130, range 790 meters, Range rate 2.4 meters per second and closing.
And the Soyuz spacecraft that you're currently seeing on your screen is about 250 meters away from the International Space Station and closing in at a rate of about 2.4 meters per second. And we have confirmation that the Impulse 5 burn was complete and it was a good burn. So there's just one burn left in that series of impulse burns. And we're expecting that in just a minute. Shortly after that, Soyuz will then conduct its fly around. Again, that fly around is scheduled for about 3 minutes from now at 2:15 p.m. Central, 3:15 p.m. Eastern, once the Soyuz spacecraft is about 400 meters away from the International Space Station.
Start of retrograde burn.
And that Impulse 6 burn is now underway.
Observe braking, range 630 meters, range rate 1.55 and closing.
And that Impulse 6 burn is now complete. We will be standing by for the fly around taking place in about 3 minutes. And the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft is now less than 400 meters away from the International Space Station and continuing to close in, now at a rate of about 1.6 meters per second. Following that fly around, the spacecraft will align with the docking port on the Roscosmos module. And once aligned, the vehicle will then go into a period of station keeping.
Range 550 meters, rate 1.6 meters per second and closing. Copy.
During that period of station keeping, it will allow flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center in Koryov outside of Moscow to analyze the alignment between the forward docking probe on Soyuz and the docking port on the space station's Roscosmos module.
Yes. We confirm.
The Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft is now less than 500 meters away from the International Space Station, and once it gets to that 400-meter mark, it will begin its fly around. And on your screen, you continue to see a view of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft captured from cameras on the International Space Station. And the vehicles are approaching the west coast of Africa. We are less than 30 seconds away from that fly around, and the vehicle is about 425 meters away from the International Space Station.
Range 402 meters, range rate 1.33 and closing. Copy.
And the Soyuz spacecraft is now about 370 meters away and will begin that fly around. Again, that fly around is going to be conducted at an angle of 54 degrees. And we have confirmation that the fly around has started. And following the fly around, the spacecraft will align.
With the AGE mode.
And following the fly around, the spacecraft will align with the docking port on the Roscosmos module, which will be the Soyuz MS-26's destination for today.
Is it better?
Да, оставь так, пожалуйста.
Much better. Keep it as is. Copy all. Keeping it the way it is now.
And this Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft is continuing to conduct its fly around.
30.14 meters. 0.73 is the range rate. We're continuing flying around, targeting the designated docking port.
Продолжать контролировать процесс облета.
Yes, go ahead. Continue the fly around process. Copy.
And the Soyuz spacecraft is now less than 300 meters away and closing in at a rate of about 0.6 meters per second. Coming up in less than 3 minutes, we will see the station keeping taking place. And this begins after the fly around and once the spacecraft is aligned with the docking port on the Roscosmos module.
Range 270 meters, range rate 058, approaching.
Принято.
Copy.
And the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft continues to conduct its fly around. It is about 250 meters away from the International Space Station.
Range rate 0.42, approaching.
And the spacecraft today will bring NASA astronaut Don Pettit and his crewmates, Roscosmos crewmates Alexey, Ovchinin, and Vagner to the International Space Station. And once they dock and the hatches are open, the station population will temporarily increase from 9 to 12 people. And we are about a minute away from transitioning to that station keeping from the fly around. And then after the station keeping and the Russian mission control team is happy with the alignment, they will begin the final approach. Final approach is currently scheduled for about 2.5 minutes from now.
Range 227 meters, 0.27, range rate approaching. We have the...
And you are seeing some of those thruster firings from Soyuz as it crosses or flies over the coast of Moscow and continues to approach the coast of Morocco and continues to approach the International Space Station.
We see Cygnus. Yes, that's it. That's the one. We see the Prichalin course. Range is 215, 0.21 is the range rate approaching. We are practically at the axis of the designated docking port of MRM-1. Please monitor K-15. We have confirmed the pre-chow signal.
And there you see the crosshair view from the Soyuz MS-26. You can see it is working to align itself with the docking probe on the Roscosmos module.
207 meters, 0.12 range rate. We have cone station keeping. We are expecting cone station keeping.
And the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft is now working to align itself with the docking port on the Roscosmos module, and we...
Yes, we see station keeping in the cone. We confirm station keeping.
And once aligned, the vehicle will then briefly go into station keeping.
We are activating the headlight.
And the vehicle is currently about 200 meters away from the International Space Station.
21:26 is the time when I activated the headlight. Range 200 meters, Range rate is 0.1 approaching. We have причал. Okay. Monitor the final approach process. Yes, we confirm final approach, причал. I see that the range is decreasing, and we see the increase of the range rate approaching the station. Copy.
And the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft has finished its period of station keeping and is now beginning the final approach to the International Space Station, reinitiating that docking sequence. Again, Soyuz uses an automated radar-based system called CORS to dock to the International Space Station.
Range is 175 meters, 0.83 is range rate approaching the station.
And the active portion of the CORS system is on Soyuz with the passive equipment on the station. And between the active portion on Soyuz, it sends a radio beacon signal to the passive portion on the space station that updates information on the range and rate of closure. And the vehicle is now about 150 meters away from the International Space Station and continuing to close in.
Range 135 meters. Range rate is 0.79 approaching the station.
We are just moments away from that docking of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft, and just 3 hours ago at 11:23 a.m. Central, 12:23 p.m. Eastern, the Soyuz lifted off atop its Soyuz 2.1A booster, propelling it into orbit.
Use some ATC mode. Fine-tuning. Yes, we see the blinking in the video. If it's not too much trouble, then could you adjust the ATC mode? Yes, we also see the blinking in our video.
And the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft and the International Space Station are currently flying east of Casablanca as the Soyuz closes in on its final approach to the International Space Station. Following initial contact and capture, there will be a period of just a couple of minutes to allow the relative motion between Soyuz and the International Space Station to dampen out on the docking interface that is between the two.
It's not working. Prolak1 speaking, it's not working to get a better video quality than we have now. Copy.
And the vehicle is now
8 meters,
less than 80 meters.
0.37 approaching the station. There will be an eclipse in about 3 minutes. Yeah, I'm thinking that too.
And the vehicle is about 69 meters away from the International Space Station, closing in at a rate of about 0.3 meters per second. The rate of closure once it gets to contact and capture will be about 1/10 of a meter per second. Again, the docking.
60 meters. Range rate is 0.17 approaching the station. The crosshairs are aligned.
Again, the docking of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft it'll dock to the Roscosmos module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. The vehicle is now about 47 meters away.
Assess VP activation. We confirm assess VP readiness. The probe is extended. Copy. Range is 40, 3 meters. The range rate is 019. Approaching the station. The crosshairs are aligned. About half its cell is the deviation from the electronic crosshairs positioning.
And there on your screen, you can see the crosshair view from the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft looking onto the International Space Station. And in the bottom left, you can see that range and rate of closure.
Range is 40 meters. The range rate is 015. Approaching the station. Deviation between the sky center and the crosshairs of the target are about 1 cell.
And there on your screen, you can see the view from the International Space Station looking to the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft as it continues to make its final approach in for docking. And on the front of the Soyuz spacecraft, you can see that docking probe. Once the contact and capture takes place and we allow the relative motion to dampen out, that docking probe, the forward docking probe on the Soyuz that you see, will begin to retract, and then hooks will close and we will have what is known as a hard mate between Soyuz and station.
Meters, range rate inaudible. Approaching the station. Crosshairs are aligned. It does match the center of the OSK.
And the Soyuz spacecraft is now 30 meters away, closing in at a rate of 0.13 meters per second. At the time of contact and capture, that will be about 1/10 of a meter per second. And you could hear some conversations between the crew on the Soyuz and teams on the ground as they were aligning the crosshair camera.
Try to use the HC mode. Yes, go ahead. Should we leave this video as is? Yes, leave it as is. Should we leave it? Yes, go ahead and leave it as is. Copy. Yes, we confirm inaudible. We have Baza Air confirmed. Copy. We have visually crossed 20 meters. The crosshairs are aligned. The target crosshairs are matching the crosshairs on the OSK.
And the International Space Station is in a brief but expected handover period, but we are continuing to get these views from the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft. And they were confirming that the spacecraft was aligned with the docking target on the International Space Station, which you can see in that crosshair view on your screen. And the vehicle is now about 15 meters away from the International Space Station, closing in at a rate of 0.11 meters per second.
Range is 15 meters. The range rate is 011. Approaching the station. Range is 10 meters. Crosshairs of the target are matching the electronic crosshairs on VSK.
And the Soyuz is now 10 meters away and continuing to close in on its docking target.
Crosshairs of the target are aligned with the center of VSK.
And we are now standing by for contact and capture.
Visually, we see 3 meters. We're expecting contact. We confirm contact. We have capture 2232 capture.
And we have confirmation of contact and capture of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft to the International Space Station at 2:32 p.m. Central, 3:32 p.m. Eastern, as the space station and Soyuz were flying 260 statute miles over central Ukraine.
And give us the spherical tank readings and the propellant.
And the forward docking probe on the Soyuz spacecraft is now beginning to retract. After that retraction is complete, hooks will begin to close.
185. Propellant 493.
Принято.
Copy.
Работаем по 57 странице.
Work per page 57.
Принято. Работаем по...
Copy. We're working per page 57.
Да, отключаем фару, закрываем РПВ-1 и запускаем...
You can turn off the headlight. Sending command R7. Sending command R7. Turning off the headlight. That would be C1818. Turned it off. Close RPV1. We're going to start the one-time monitoring sequence. Started.
Ваня, мне время скажи, когда...
Could you tell us the time? 22:34:01 is the time.
И первые значения какие выдали?
And what are the first? What are your initial readings? Pressure in 805, 831 in the bill, 860 inaudible.
Принято.
Copy.
Следующий замер через 5 минут.
Rod interference, inaudible comment.
Контролируйте стягивание объектов.
Please monitor the vehicle retraction. MCC Moscow, what are your instructions about the video?
Ну, его можно уже отключить.
Well, you can response inaudible. So can we turn it off?
Да.
Yes. Yes, you can. Copy. Turning off the video. The video is off.
And you heard some conversation between the Soyuz crew and the ground controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center in Koryov outside of Moscow, which you currently see a view of on your screen as the Soyuz docking probe continues to retract, and we stand by for the hooks to close to form that hard mate.
Query. Copy. We have
and we have confirmation that the hooks on the Soyuz are now driving.
D17 message is no longer eliminated. We're waiting for the D15 to be eliminated. I confirm.
Again, we saw the docking of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft earlier, just a few minutes ago.
Eliminated. It's D15.
At 2:32 p.m. Central, and now we have confirmation that the hooks have closed, forming a hard mate between Soyuz and the International Space Station.
D13 is not on. We're waiting for the gas-17 to be eliminated as in hooks retracted. Copy. I confirm. Yes, I confirm working for 58.
And with that hard mate, there will then be a period of some leak checks and pressurization of the vestibule before opening the hatches to welcome the newly arrived Soyuz MS-26 crew to the International Space Station later today.
Бурлак 2, СУП Москвы. Вань, скажи. И там потом...
Could you give us the next measurement? Five-minute measurement. 8:05 in SS in SAT 831 in the bill. 860 in the instrumentation compartment. Gas 17 Alexey retracted is eliminated. We're waiting. The SM probe retracted is D11, expecting that to be eliminated shortly. We confirm the SM probe is retracted. Assess the mode complete. We have confirmation. We are ready to send command D8 SSVP to turn off SSVP one more time. Could you repeat one more time? Turn off SSVP. Copy. We're sending D8. I turned it off. D11 is no longer illuminated. D15 is no longer eliminated. Watching hooks are not eliminated. That is gas 17. D11 is not eliminated. SSVP mode complete is not eliminated. We're going to record, save the recording. So, info out 1, 18, input 2, file saved 000 log. Giving the names of the files that the log recordings were saved in. Copy.
Alexey, там с вами с Байконура хотят поговорить.
Alexey, they want to talk to you from Baikonur. We're ready. Crew members, Baikonur speaking. We can barely hear you. Is this better now? A little bit better. We're very happy for you. We're congratulating you on the soft docking. Hi to everyone. Have a successful flight, complete all the science objectives, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you again on the ground. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Так, 15 минут у вас.
15 minutes. At 49 minutes.
49 минут будет.
Speaking simultaneously. Maybe we can move on to page 5959 for now.
Да, можно отключить.
Yes. You can turn off the antenna heater.
До момента Т-сепки плюс 20.
You can execute steps up to time of temperature plus 20. Okay, copy. We're sending command get 2.
And you just heard some congratulatory words from Roscosmos officials down in Baikonur, where the Soyuz 2.1A booster launched about 3 hours and 20 minutes ago. And following that launch earlier today at 11:23 a.m. Central Time, 12:23 p.m. Eastern Time from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, that set the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft up for its short 2-orbit journey. And NASA astronaut Don Pettit and Roscosmos cosmonauts Alexey Ovchinin and Vagner have now safely docked to the International Space Station's Roscosmos module this afternoon at 2:32 p.m. Central, 3:32 p.m. Eastern, as the International Space Station and the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft were traveling over central Ukraine. Following a series of standard leak checks, the Expedition 71 crew currently on board the space station will open the hatches between the orbiting laboratory and Soyuz to greet Pettit, Ovchinin, and Vagner. NASA coverage of hatch opening and welcoming remarks will begin at 4:30 p.m. Central, 5:30 p.m. Eastern, with that hatch opening planned to take place around 4:50 p.m. Central, 5:50 p.m. Eastern. Until then, this is Mission Control Houston.